Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you this evening to go over chapter 1, which is called Social Work Practice in the 21st Century. I did take some notes as I read the chapter. I'm not going to go over the whole chapter, but I am going to touch on some topics that I thought were important. I think chapter 1 is a great foundation for working in gerontology, and it's great information that you should hold on to. Or, what I like to say is, it's like a coin and you put it in your back pocket until you need it. Oh, before I go any further, I just want to say, if you hear a dog in the background, it's one of mine, and he's mad because I put him to bed early. So I'm not abusing my pup, okay? So, getting started. So, within chapter 1, some of the first things that it talked about on page 4 is in order to be an effective social worker working with the older adult population, that we should consider cognitive, behavioral, and environmental issues, and that we should consider these things simultaneously. And they also talked about having a holistic treatment approach is better. I wholeheartedly agree with these statements. And the reason why is because I can tell you a number of times when I was working in adult protective services in where I would meet a client who had a need, but I had to look at the bigger picture. So for an example, if I was taking someone out of their home, I had to consider how. Number one, where am I going to place them? How are they going to pay for it? Who will know where they are? Will the place that I place them give them adequate help? Health care, food, clothing, shelter, or would it be better just for me to keep them in their home and put those services in their home? What would be better on their mental health? I can tell you, I had this one situation. I'll never forget this lady. She was a classic hoarder. She had not come out of her home for years. She had the building maintenance guy who would come into her home, clean her home for her, or make a path or make enough egress for him to be able to get places. He would pay her bills. He would go grocery shopping for her, etc. Um, Even though he was a great assistance to her, she still had a whole lot of issues that needed to be dealt with. So I had to take her out of her home. And since she had not been out of her home for many a years, it was very difficult for her to adjust, not being in the comfort of her home. And unfortunately, this individual died not 30 days after being in her home. Now, mind you, she was in the hospital. She had good health. They had cleaned her up, washed her hair, cut her nails. She was eating a decent meal. And even when talking to her, she stated that she felt physically better, but she was still very lonely. And that being outside of her home and away from her possessions was most definitely an adjustment. So, she did not die from heart disease. She did not die from a stroke. She simply died because she no longer had a will to live. And in the medical community, they call that failure to thrive. So, when that situation happened, and she perished, and the hospital notified me that she had passed away, one of the things that I thought to myself was would she have lived longer if she would have maintained in her home? And even though no one really knows, I do feel like she probably would have lived a little bit longer. But because of the laws and other issues that were going on, I had to take her out. So, when looking at someone, when you're trying to help someone, you have to look at all of that. You have to look at the bigger picture. So, chapter 1, page 4, it really hit home for me, and I thought that that was something that, as a new social worker, we should all consider. We should look at the holistic approach, and we should look at all levels when treating an individual. Um, Going on in the chapter, they talked about some demographic information, which is individuals that are 85 years and older. That population has grown and it's steadily increasing due to life expectancy. People are not dying of the same things that they are dying of in the 1776 versus 2000s. We have more medical technology. We have better medicines. We have a lot more things to keep people alive than what they had maybe 10, 15 years ago. So most definitely we are in need of social workers that are going into the field of gerontology. Other things that they talked about, which is in this older population, women still outnumber men, and you can find these numbers on page 4 through 5. It also states that older white adults are more likely to live alone than their minority counterparts. And then it also talks about how white adults, whether we male or female, live longer than their minority counterparts. And most definitely, we can go jump down that rabbit hole and talk about why. And it's most definitely a disparity issue, but those are the facts. It also goes on to talk about that poverty, it talks about poverty rates. And one of the things that it said about poverty rates is that poverty rates in our older adults most definitely have declined since 1990s. However, minority, particularly Black people, still have the highest poverty rates within the older community. It also talks about some of the diseases that we need to look out for when treating older adults, which is heart disease, hypertension, diabetes. It talks about how women, especially minority women, are more susceptible to suffer from these issues. It goes on to talk about how men, regardless of race, are the largest population within the older community that can live alone and free from limitations. In this chapter, it also talks about understanding the demographics of the aging population, which I touched on a little bit before. And understanding the demographics is very important. As a social worker, older adults are more likely to have complex issues that involve biological, psychological, and social factors. And we need to use or look at treating these issues as an integrative practice or a holistic approach, so we can kind of look at how our intervention is going to impact the whole adult and even their families and their communities that they live in. Going on in this chapter, there's some things that most definitely I want you guys to understand, which is what is life course perspective. What is diversity and how does it impact older populations? What is a multidisciplinary perspective and how we can use that when working with older adults, as well as power versus or empowerment, and how that impacts older adults. So again, I would love for you to go through chapter 1 and read it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about chapter 1, or if you want me to get in a little bit more in depth, most definitely let me know. Leave a comment below and we can talk about it. Other than that, you guys have a great night or day. And I look forward to talking to you in regards to chapter 2 next week. Thank you. Bye.